You're listening to the Simply Flawsome Show, a podcast designed for you to listen, learn, and leverage. Please welcome your host, Zoe Turner.
Forward to this episode. When I saw this lady speak at the Rove Hotel in Dubai Marina, I was very much attracted to her warmth, her energy, and the passion in which she delivers her message. So without further ado, please welcome Lubna Forzley to the podcast today.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Lubna. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you coming on to the podcast. Lubna, in your bio, you say that you're a disruptor. What does the word disruptive mean to you?
So I see the word disruptive in a very, very positive sense. And maybe I can start, since I'm a storyteller, by telling you a small story. I was raised during the war. And so I was raised in disruption every single day. There were days when we'd wake up and there would be no electricity, so we had to light the way. There were days when we'd wake up and there would be no food and all the shops were closed, so we had to find a way to bake bread if we couldn't buy bread. So when you go through something like this, you become a disruptor in a positive sense, because you learn to find a solution to every problem. And that's what I feel I am. I'm a person who loves to think different, who loves to find solutions to every problem, who loves to be unique and different. I don't believe that the norm will get you anywhere in life. I think companies who are unique and different are going to go further than other companies. And I think individuals that are unique and different and disruptors are going to go further in life. So I believe the future is for disruptors in a positive way.
Thank you. Lubna, you are a storyteller, and this is a subject that interests me immensely. Before we started the podcast today, I showed you one of the stories that I'd been writing this morning. Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by this when you say you're a storyteller, and what impact can stories have on business, and how can these relate to the profits of a business?
So I really believe that storytelling is so important for every business and every individual. And I say in my recent TEDx talk that on our deathbed, the only thing that remains is that story we leave behind, because when on our deathbed, we don't take away anything with us. We don't take away with us our money or our homes or our brand names clothes or anything. We just take away the story that we leave behind. So I'm a big advocate for storytelling for both individuals and businesses. And I think it's so important for businesses to use storytelling as a tool to connect with their audience. Because at the end of the day, I also believe in what Simon Sinek says. It's so important to start with why. It's so important to tell people what you believe in and why you exist, rather than pushing down messages about your product. People don't buy your product. People buy you as an individual or buy you as a company. That's why I really believe that storytelling is so important.
Let's go back to what you said previously, which was about that you grew up during the war. So I remember the first time that I met you, I was crying of that story you told. Not sure if we've got long enough today for you to talk about that, but you were telling the story about your father and his ice cream business. Are you able to tell us that story today?
In brief, sure.
Maybe you condense it down.
And I'll try. So I remember we had to leave Lebanon to move to Canada because of the war. And my dad was a PhD professor. And as a PhD professor, he had to go to Canada and start over, at zero. We started from nothing. And we wanted to find any way to finance our future. And all he could find was a store, an ice cream store that was bankrupt, completely bankrupt. And they said to him, if you could revive that store, we would give it to you for free. So my dad took on the store, and he started inviting seniors in for a coffee. He started inviting families in for ice cream, just to revive it. And we had a child come one day and say to my dad, I would like a float. So my dad said to him, Sure. And my dad had no clue what a float was. He hardly spoke any English. He was a university professor, but he wanted to make this work. So he said to the child, would you like it strong or mild? And the child said, really strong. So he said, yeah, let's come behind the counter and let's do it together. So he made the child actually do that float. And that remained with me for a long time because he taught me really good lessons. He basically ended up reviving that store and doing, completely transforming it. So you can take something from nothing and transform it. So that's the first lesson. The second lesson he taught me was, when you're presented with an opportunity, you say yes, and then you figure out how to make it happen later. And that's what he did with that store. He didn't know what a float was. He hardly spoke English. He didn't know, he just made it happen. And you'd be surprised what you can do when you actually just want to actually make a difference in life.
And that float became one of the most popular things on the menu.
Absolutely.
I love that story. That brings up a couple of questions, really. Firstly, that I listen to loads of podcasts, lots and lots of business podcasts. And one that I was listening to recently was talking about buying businesses that have been struggling. Mm-hmm. And that was something which is obviously what your father did. He bought a business that had developed a really bad reputation and, and he built it up to be a really profitable ice cream parlor, yeah? And it kind of got me thinking about business, because I kind of thought, well, that's what I would stay away from. I'd stay away from, buying a business that, had been in operation maybe a few years, developed a bad reputation, they weren't doing well and they weren't making enough profits. However, I know a lot of people that have done this and have been very, very successful. And I guess the first few years of starting a business are always going to be the hardest. Mm-hmm. So taking on a business that has actually gone through all that pain and the challenges of being a startup, it could actually be quite beneficial.
Mm-hmm. I believe that. I haven't done it personally myself, but I really believe that where there's a will, there's a way. So if it's a niche on its own, actually. If you choose to focus on businesses that have gone bankrupt, it's actually a good niche. At one point when I started my own business, I wanted to do something that didn't exist in the market, because there's a lot of communication and marketing agencies in Dubai and in the region. And at one point I actually thought of focusing only on companies that have gone bankrupt and helping them reshape their story or recommunicate their story. I chose a different path. So I do believe in it, but I believed in a different path more at the time. But yeah.
Your father's story also got me thinking about one of the questions that I was going to ask you, and that today business is the focus is a lot about giving value rather than chasing the money. The likes of Gary Vee, they talk about this a lot, and you do too with your business. You're a huge advocate for women in business, so you like to give back. Part of this includes your partnership with Mums at Work, in which you give lots of free talks. So like your father giving away free coffee and free ice creams, that helped his business in the long run.
So I totally, first and foremost, I'm very, very proud of my partnership with Mums at Work. And it's one of the times during the month when I actually speak or coach moms where I feel most alive. And to be honest, none of these moms are my target audience. My target audience are corporates. And I only work with a certain level of corporates. But I do this because I really believe in it. And I'm a mother myself, and as a mom, I found it really, really hard. My motherhood journey was really hard at the beginning, and I kept thinking, why can't I have somebody help me? I wish I had somebody help me, especially as an expat without my family around me. And at the time, I was also a single mom with my husband living in a different country. And I just love to help other moms out. I love to give them a boost and tell them they can do it. And it's the times, in the month when I volunteer with them that I feel most alive. I love helping other moms. I really believe that mothers change the world. I believe that a mother changes her home and teaches her children how to impact the future. And I think that change starts within. So if you're a mother that's able to actually change the way you manage your home and teach your kids to have impact in life, that's how you create impact in the future. So that's why I do whatever I can to help moms.
That's incredible. So Lubna, let's go back to storytelling.
Sure.
You do a lot of work with banks who are undergoing digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
What's your advice to them on storytelling?
So most of the banks that are going through digital transformation are rebranding and, you know, changing their logo and changing, you know, their face, like doing a facelift. And my best advice to them is to start from within. It's almost like looking at a woman who's gone through a transformation. She gets a makeover, but her heart is the same. That's going to flop. And so if you want to actually go through a transformation, you need to change from within and change your culture first, change your processes, change your, you know, the way you're operating. And then your last step is to actually do that external transformation. And I think a lot of banks get that wrong. So for example, I've banked with a bank in UAE, without mentioning their name, that have rebranded and did a beautiful, beautiful campaign. And I opened an account with them online without having to go to a branch. And I thought it was amazing. But then I never used that account. And a year and a half later, nobody has ever called me and asked me why I haven't used that account. So they had gone through so much pain and effort to rebrand and to look great externally and change their logo and spend millions and millions of dollars just to rebrand and do communication campaigns. But then their operations were still the same. Their culture is still the same. And I don't know why companies do that. I really think that they should actually prepare a proper communication and marketing strategy and transform from within, have the right processes in place and culture in place, and then transform externally after.
Do you find it a challenge to change the culture within the UAE, especially in the corporates?
Yeah, I think culture is one of these things that's seen as a plus rather than as a must-have. And so, you know, companies and banks and everyone tends to spend so much money and effort on, you know, on the external world and what people see rather than on the heart of the issue. And I really hope that companies and banks spend more time and effort on changing their culture first. So for me, culture is about values, and it's about living these values. So it's about hiring, firing, and promoting based on these values. And you see a lot of companies that have beautiful values written on their walls, but they don't do anything about them. And I hope, you know, that they do actually do something about them, because it's just about having the right rewards and consequences for these values.
How do you go about changing the culture in an organization?
So there are many, many steps to that. I think it starts with an audit, with understanding what the culture is about. Understanding also, you know, what are the rewards for the right practices, what are the consequences for the wrong practices, making sure that the company is starting with why or starting with a purpose, and making sure that the leadership team is actually echoing that with the founder or with the CEO, and that they in turn are echoing that for their own employees. So that's in brief how I would start. The foundation of every cultural change is starting with the why or starting with the purpose, understanding it, and then rallying everyone to do the same.
Thank you. What constitutes a good story?
I'm trying to talk to you and at the same time fix my headset.
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna lose
you
it.
Don't have
much
to.
Better.
You don't
okay?
have to wear that. I thought it might be easier if you could hear yourself speak.
That's okay. I'm cool.
Okay. You've just had your head on as
Yeah.
well.
Does it look good?
So back to my question: what constitutes a good story, and is it something that can be learnt?
Yes. So if you look at top storytellers in the world, whether they're individual or companies, they share two things in common. So Steve Jobs and Apple, they have an impactful story, and that's because it's two things. It connects with people and it's inspiring. So the foundation for me for every story is that it has to be inspiring and it has to connect with its audience. The other things that you can do to make your story more impactful is to make sure that it's entertaining, because everybody loves humor. Everybody wants somebody to make them smile. And if that story is teaching somebody something. You're sharing your knowledge with someone. So if you can get these 4 things right, I think I'd say these are the foundations of every story. I mean, there's many other things that play important factors in a good story, but these are my top 4.
Okay, can we summarize that?
Yes, inspiring, a story that inspires, a story that connects, a story that includes humor, and a story that shares knowledge.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my next question was, is there a set structure? If you were teaching me how to tell a good story, would you have like guidelines on what I could follow in order to deliver that story?
Sure. So there are lots and lots of different tips for storytelling, and I'll be more than happy to share these with you. And I'm doing a series also on storytelling tips, which I'll be releasing soon. But the best tip of storytelling is to know who your audience is, to know their pain, and to provide a solution to their pain. That's how you connect with your audience. And for me, that's the foundation of everything, because many companies and many individuals get that wrong. You need to start with the end in mind. You need to start with your audience. The other thing you want to do is you want to tell people along the journey, use people's senses as you're telling the story. What did you feel? What did you hear? What did you know? Just use everybody's senses. And then talk about a defining moment in your life or in your business that is kind of a climax. So, you start with the beginning, you get to a climax, and then you show a resolution to that climax. So you take a defining moment that happened in your life and you kind of blow it out of proportion by saying, this and this happened, and that's how I felt when it happened, and that's how I was able to overcome the situation. So there are also other tips to storytelling. There are 7 storytelling archetypes. One of them, for example, is overcoming adversity. Stories of overcoming adversity tend to do really well. So you're showing somebody who has gone through a lot of difficulty in their life, and you're showing how they've overcome that difficulty. So you start with the beginning, you describe the story, you get to a climax, which is the difficulty, and then you show the resolution to that difficulty. So stories of adversity tend to do well, stories of rebirth tend to do well, humorous stories tend to do well. All the archetypes really do well, but there are some that do better than others depending on the situation and the defining moment.
Who would you recommend the listeners go to if they would like to research storytelling? Is there any particular people that really inspire you? Anyone that you would recommend that people watch on YouTube to get some ideas?
So I like a gentleman called Brian Solis. You'll find him on LinkedIn. I've watched him personally live in an event, and I really like his thinking. He's quite... he talks a lot about storytelling, but he's also a disruptor by nature. He's very intelligent and very deep. So yeah, he's one of my favorites.
Anyone else?
I like companies that use storytelling, actually. So for example, I love Nike's storytelling. So I'd advise people to watch Nike's ads. If we had to pick a company here in the Middle East, I like the glass company, Maghrebi. I don't know if you've seen their campaigns. No, I love the way they feature their brand, and they're fearless, and I love brands that are fearless. I think another element of storytelling is to actually do something that's unique and different, as I told you before. Brands that are just gonna be like the norm are not gonna make it in the future. Influencers that are gonna be like the norm are not gonna make it in the future. But people who dare to be different, and who dare to be bold, and who dare to be unique, are gonna do better in the future. So this specific company, Maghrebi, who has glasses, did a few beautiful campaigns in the Middle East. And if you look at their Facebook page or their YouTube or any of their social channels, you'll find that some people criticized what they did, but many people were also with them. But the last campaign had 11 million views. That's quite good for a company in the Middle East.
Absolutely
It's amazing. And, you could look at that and say, some people didn't like their campaign, but it's irrelevant, really. It's, they had an amazing campaign. They stood for something, and they were bold enough to repeat it over and over on a different topic. So the first campaign they did was on women, and it had some positive feedback and some negative feedback, but the majority was positive. Somebody like them could have actually stopped after this campaign because they saw some negative feedback, but they didn't. They were bold enough to continue and do it again and do it better next time. So I believe in companies like that.
Okay. You've inspired me to actually go out there and Google them and watch their campaigns.
They're beautiful. I'll send it to you.
Don't they make sunglasses?
They make normal glasses, sunglasses, any kind of glass. Yeah. They had their first campaign was called Empower Your Vision, which is very, very smart because they, it's all about vision, right? So they were playing on words and it was all about women. Just really very touching campaign.
Yeah. It was interesting what you were saying then about just being unique. Like today, this, you really have to be successful. A lot of it is just about being yourself, being who you are, embracing yourself and standing out, not fitting in with the crowd.
Absolutely.
For so many years, I know myself included, and I was writing about this yesterday, made so many decisions and did so many things just to fit in with society or people's expectations of you. But really, when you're authentic with who you are, that is when, you really do start to kind of make a difference, and things change. Things change in your life.
I think you sleep with peace when you're yourself, and I think that's the most important thing, to wake up every day and to sleep every day with peace and knowing that you're there, that God gave you a gift, and that gift may not please other people, and you're okay with that you use that gift to change the world. And there are people who tell me, oh, don't put the word disruptor on your LinkedIn profile, or don't use the word. That's who I am. I was raised in disruption, and I'm so proud that I was able to take this disruption and do something out of it.
And do something positive with it.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. I totally agree with that. And when you're being disruptive, when you're being a little bit out of the ordinary and you're being unique, there's always going to be somebody out there that criticizes, somebody that's not comfortable with it. Probably
maybe they're not comfortable with themselves.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with you.
Exactly. Well, thank you for that. Lubna, they say that the UAE is approaching a recession. Have you noticed a difference in your business? And if so, what do you do to stay afloat during challenging economic times?
So I'm not the best economist out there, but I do notice that the mood has changed, not only in the UAE, but across the Middle East. I noticed it also on my holiday in Beirut this summer. So the mood is definitely not the same. And I think it's hard. And the best advice I can give people is to keep going. I mean, it's just a cloud and it will pass.
Yeah, and that's great advice. Fantastic advice. Thank you. So we've spoken about how you're a huge advocate for women in business and you like to give back. As we said before, part of this includes your partnership with Mums at Work.
Mm-hmm.
Lubna, there's so many women over the world who don't have the same opportunities as we have been given. What would be your one bit of advice to any woman that would like to achieve something but feels as though there's something stopping her and holding her back?
So I kind of disagree a little bit with the question or the comment, because I don't believe that, other people don't have the same opportunity that I have, because I think you create your opportunity. So my first advice is that you go out and create your own opportunity. I could have taken this disruption I was raised with and done nothing with it. I could have, but I didn't. I took that disruption and I did something out of it. I went to Canada with my family with nothing, absolutely nothing. I started working at the age of 14. And I am where I am today because I created my own opportunity. And so there's no limits in life. My first advice is to just create your own opportunity and to just not let other things hold you back. Like, for example, if I go out today on LinkedIn and I reach out to 100 people and only 5 respond, I'm okay with that 5. You could see the 95 that don't respond, or you could look at, hey, 5 people responded. What could I do with these 5 people? So just go out and create your own opportunities. And last but not least, use your gifts, use your voice. You have a voice for a reason. God gave you a gift for a reason. You're not an accident. Nobody here is an accident in life. I really believe that with all my heart. And I think think every human being and every woman should use her voice, should use her talents, should use her gifts for the benefit of society.
Thank you for that. Let's go back to your LinkedIn, because you spoke about that. And before we started the podcast, you told me that this past year you've focused a lot on your own kind of social media, like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. As a result of that, you've created, in a very short space of time, a very good following on LinkedIn. How have you achieved that so quickly?
So I made a conscious decision this year, actually, in Feb, to just become active on social media. And I wanted to focus. I believe in focus. And I wanted to focus on LinkedIn because that's where my target audience is, CEOs mainly. So I thought, rather than be all over the place, just focus on LinkedIn. And I started on LinkedIn, and I used an online offline strategy. So it's a combo, not just an online strategy. So I started speaking in a lot of events and uploading these speeches on my LinkedIn profile, which actually helps with visibility. I started consciously connecting with certain individuals that were among my target audience on LinkedIn. I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn to actually grow my following, and I do every day. I spent a lot of time observing. I think it's important to observe. I observe who the right influencers are. I connect with them. I add value to them. I comment on them. I try to get them to comment on my stuff as well. I do a lot of research. I appear in podcasts. So I think it's not a one thing that helped me grow my following. It's many, many different things. But it takes a lot of time and effort, but it's like anything else in life. If you want to grow and you want to achieve something, you have to be ready to put in the work.
It's not only 20 minutes a day you're spending on LinkedIn.
Absolutely not.
How many hours a day are you
it varies, but on a minimum 1 hour a day up to 4 hours a day. It's a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. And that includes, generally you post once, but a lot of that includes commenting and engaging and interacting with other people.
Yes.
And I think that's the key here.
Yes.
Because a lot of people out there think, oh, I can post every single day and then just leave it and assume that your following is going to grow. But really, the engagement in your following grows from you interacting. And why, it's like you said before, why are people going to comment and engage with you if you're not reciprocating or if you're not doing the same with others?
For me, social media, I mean, it's called social because you need to be social. And it's exactly like being offline. If you want, you go up in an elevator, if you want the person to talk to you, you're going to need to also smile at them and say good morning so that they can respond. And so it's the same online. It's using the exact same principles. It's about engaging with other people. I'd rather you post once a week and spend the other 5 days engaging with other people so that the day you post, they engage back with you. And one of the things that many people have actually started doing with me, and now I reciprocate at times, is that when they post, they actually send me a private message with their post so that I can actually go in and know that they've posted. Because we're inundated with a lot of messages, and I don't tend to notice everybody's posts all the time. But if people want me to comment on their post, they either tag me in the comments or they send me their post, and I actually make sure that every single day I respond to whoever tags me or I respond to whoever sends me a message, except once where somebody tagged me on something because there was an issue and one profile was taken down and they wanted me to comment on that, and I have no interest in getting involved in conflicts or in gossip. I'm on LinkedIn to make impact and to be positive, and so I will not comment on things like that. But anything other than that, I'm more than happy to comment on anyone, no matter how big they are, how small they are. I will go in and I will make a comment.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know Gary Vee, I follow Gary Vee a lot. I think I've mentioned him another time in this podcast, but he talks about if you haven't got a LinkedIn strategy, get one now.
Yes.
Because the algorithms have changed in relation to Facebook, have changed into relation to Instagram. LinkedIn, I know he talks about TikTok a lot. I did get on TikTok and I have been posting videos, but I've only got 1 follower.
Hey, why not? I only have like 415 on Instagram, but I still post. So I think you need to choose what's right for you. I mean, I'm on Instagram and I'm on LinkedIn, but my heart is really in LinkedIn. I post on Instagram because I tag my daughter a lot. I want to inspire my daughter.
It will be really interesting to see where TikTok does go, because so many people are saying that, you know, right now it's just focusing on children, which is what Instagram was initially, and Facebook or whatever back in the day, back in the very early days. I'm still yet to be convinced that TikTok is going to be this amazing platform that everybody makes out, that the likes of Gary Vee and lots of other people make out it's going to be. But it'll be really interesting to see kind of what happens. But at the moment, I am uploading on there.
That's good.
But I'm obviously not doing enough because I've only got one follower.
Okay. That's okay. So I'm not doing enough on Instagram, and I'm okay with that. I think what's important is that you pick only one channel at the beginning that you just put your heart and energy into, and then when you have enough of that, you know, there's so much to be done on LinkedIn on its own.
So easy at the moment, I think, to build a reach and a good following on there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I have changed my strategy in relation to LinkedIn, but I also feel that I need to up my game a little bit and apply the principles that I apply to Instagram, to LinkedIn, not only to increase my followers, you know, the people I'm following, but to get more engagement, more interaction, more visibility.
I'll start following you on Instagram. And I'll engage more with you on LinkedIn.
Awesome on Instagram.
Excellent. I love your name, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I want all women to be Flawsome.
Sorry?
I want all women to be Flawsome.
I know, and to be proud of it, to be
Absolutely.
proud of their flaws and accept that they're beautiful,
Absolutely.
regardless.
Yes.
So, Lubna, the underlying theme with all my podcast is mental health. Do you think there's a correlation between being an entrepreneur and mental health? This is a question that I like asking my guests, because most of them tend to be entrepreneurs. And I do get a very mixed response. What's your view on that?
I think that entrepreneurs possibly have more chances of having, I don't want to call them mental health issues, but having more stress, right? Because it's not easy being an entrepreneur. You know, it's so much easier to just have a 9-to-5 job, go to your job, do your thing, get your paycheck at the end of the month. Being an entrepreneur takes a lot of time, energy, courage. It's a lot of ups and downs. You know, one day you're on cloud 9, another day you're on the floor. So you need to have a lot of grit. You need to have belief in your idea. And I think it's also harder with women and with mothers specifically, because it's so hard to be a mom and to have your business at the same time. So yeah, I find that there is a correlation. I don't know the stats, to be honest, but I think it's harder for entrepreneurs, and I think it's harder for mother entrepreneurs.
What do you think are the main challenges to overcome when it comes to mental health as a working mum, coming from being a working mum with your own business?
So one of the hardest things I've had to overcome personally is feeling guilty. I think when you're a working mom, you tend to feel guilty when you're not working. You feel guilty when you're not with the kids. You feel guilty when you're working and you're putting too much time in your work. So it's just really overcoming guilt. That's what I've had to personally struggle with. And I think the best way I've learned to overcome it is by just always remembering that I'm doing enough. You know, I'm doing enough for my business. I'm doing enough for my kids, and it's enough. That's how I convince myself, at least.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Lubna, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I'm trying to keep these brief to about 30 minutes. We're on 35 minutes now, so I'd like to thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming in today. And I'd also like to thank Rove Hotel in Dubai Marina for their continued support with the podcast and allowing us to use their amazing venue to record all our episodes.
Yay.
Thank you.
I like the Rove Hotel.
I love the Rove.
Yes.
And that's where I saw you speak for the very
Excellent.
first